all the time with banks. Supposedly, there is a customer at Wells Fargo who had his bank account frozen because he deposited $207,765. Now, according to Wells Fargo, they don't believe where the money came from. So I read this, and it's kind of wild. So Ethan Parker, okay, so he basically got an inheritance. Okay, I think it was his what is it? Okay, so he deposited $207,000. Okay, he opened his account for the sole purpose of receiving this check. His adoptive mother unfortunately passed away. Okay, so he told the bank, yeah, I'm going to get this large sum from I guess it's his inheritance, basically, right? So after depositing, 15 days afterwards, they just shut down his account because they thought that the check that he used to deposit was fake. So then he went back to the firm that issued the check, got an official letter saying, no, it's a real check. It's not a forgery. They still do not believe it. And as of right now, they're still holding his $207,000. So now he has to go sue them to get that money back. Okay, that's just really, really strange. So, with banks, I know they have their rules, right? I know the regulators force banks and the IRS force banks sometimes to ask you where the money's coming from and stuff like that. And there's a lot of rules they have to abide by. But sometimes banks just do some weird stuff, okay? For whatever reason. And that is why banks get slapped on the wrist with fines all the time, right? And business goes on. For example, last month, Wells Fargo paid $35 million to the SEC for allegedly charging excessive fees to customers. Okay? Somehow, doing something illegal, charging excessive fees is okay. Money laundering, they get slapped on the wrist with large fines all the time. What about opening accounts that customers don't want? Yeah, that happens too. And they get fined for that, yet no one really gets in trouble or goes to jail for it. Banks are protected, right? They can basically do what they want. They can over leverage and collapse these days, and they know Big Daddy Powell will save them too. So it's like there's no repercussions. They just do what they want. But anyways, we hear about this all the time. I had experienced this before I opened a business account, and it never even opened. Like I waited 6 months, and they kept asking what my business does, where the money's coming from, and this and that, and they didn't like the answers, and they shut down my account. I mean, I've experienced it firsthand. A lot of you guys have also, right? This is what happens when you have a centralized entity like a bank. That's why even Jordan Peterson suggests it's time to scrape banks and use Bitcoin, right? There's so many that are starting to question, why do we need to use banks when we have Bitcoin and Lightning Network and everything else that's out there, right? We have better forms of money. We have better forms of payment rails, okay? Decentralized ones that can't stop your transaction, can't close your account or freeze your funds, right? With Bitcoin, if you want to send money to your relative, to your friend across the ocean, anywhere, they'll get there in 10 minutes. That's it. There's no one that will stop you and freeze you or freeze them or anything like that. That's the beauty of a decentralized network versus a centralized network. And most people don't understand the difference, how powerful it is to have a decentralized network that no country on earth can stop. All right, and then last few points. I talked about Ethereum and the SEC, right? Even though Gary Gensler still hints that Ethereum is a security, it's really not. And Ethereum is doing quite well too. Over 1 million active addresses, even overtaking Bitcoin in terms of daily active addresses. That's very hard to do. Very hard to do indeed. And you have a lot of Whales right now because Ethereum also is trying to get some spot ETFs and futures ETFs, both at the same time. Ethereum doesn't even have future-based ETFs yet, but there are fund managers that are trying to come out with both. So you do have a lot of whales that's also buying in a ton of Ether. That is, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, and then Australian bank, ANZ, is also doing the same thing, but they're utilizing Chainlink CCIP for cross-chain interoperability. So that's fantastic. A lot of news, a lot of talk about Chainlink recently, right? Because Chainlink, after years upon years upon years, their CCIP network is basically, it's basically a framework that allows different chains to talk to each other and brings true interoperability for hundreds of dApps, and now it's being looked at by banks as well. So good for Chainlink. They've been moving pretty good recently. But of course, it's not just Chainlink. Ripple is also in there, right? Brad Garlinghouse is saying that, yeah, XRP will be the next Bitcoin. Why? Because the XRP ledger is going to bring upon a lot of interoperability, basically, right? So that's awesome. And then also Avalanche. Avalanche also, you know, they want to do the same thing. In fact, they just launched a 50 million initiative where they're going to buy tokens of assets on the Avalanche network. So they're just going to buy it up, which is quite interesting, right? But Avalanche is also in the mix. They're not the same as Chainlink or Ripple in terms of being like a bridge currency, bringing interoperability, but they're working on it. But this is more like just focusing on tokens, right? So good for them. And also Binance. Binance is also fighting a lot of FUD. CZ is, and basically saying how all the reports about Binance.us is basically false, including one that claimed that CZ took a $250 million loan from Binance.us, which CZ answered, no, they got it backwards. I gave a loan, a $250 million to Binance.us, which they have not repaid. So it's kind of like he said, she said right now. And they also, of course, are battling the SEC. Everyone is battling the SEC. No one likes what the SEC is doing. So, yeah, I agree with Coinbase. We should all stand together and drive Gary Gensler out of office, right? But the best performing project of 2023 so far, you may be surprised to learn about this. I certainly was when I read this headline, is Injective. Injective is the top crypto performer of 2023. They have gone up 450%. That's amazing. That's amazing. So what is Injective? They're a DeFi L1 protocol out of Cosmos, okay? And they are their own chain. And they're doing a lot of great things right now, including coming out with something new called NEVM. It's a scaling solution and an interoperability layer, okay, that basically makes it so that dApps are compatible with Ethereum and also Cosmos and also Solana. It's like the trifecta. I don't even quite know how it works, but dApps that's built with NEVM can talk to all three basically ecosystems and all three chains. And that's quite amazing. That is a trifecta. So that is something that Injective is working on. They're also working on 2.0 with their burn, right? Basically, they have this very big burn incentive as well. So that also helps, right? So Injective is actually doing quite well, although I didn't know they were doing that well. And of course, Injective is part of Cosmos, which is a growing layer 0. And there's other L1 chains out of Cosmos. And Cosmos itself is upgrading. They're going to offer liquid staking, but they're going to remove the 21-day locking unstaking period, which is very annoying. 21 days is a very long time, right? So they're going to get rid of that as well. And also, there's other things. Injective also has Circle's USDC stablecoin, right? So basic Cosmos, Injective, and there's several others that's within Cosmos ecosystem that are just doing quite well. One of my favorite projects, Cosmos. And Injective, definitely a project to be watching out for.